Yeah, we got 3 viewers. We got sound. Okay, where's You've been replaced by a robot, This may be, but just
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for showing up a little early. The official show starts at 7, but I want to just spend a little time hanging out with you guys and hanging out with the people on the chat. Anyone who's watching on YouTube, please check in. I've got them right here. They're going to comment away. Let's see. Yep, there's Brandon Whaley. We got Nico. We got Dr. Hannah in the house. They see me and they hear us. That's working. This is fantastic. We're going to have a sold-out show tonight, and a lot of people. We got 22 people on the live stream, but more and more coming. So I thought I'd play a little game with you all, and I'm going to work with my friend Aiden up on the stage. Aiden is running a lot of the technology up there. He was in rehearsal until 6 p.m. Tonight, and then he ran over here. And then we got Derek up there on the camera. Derek, wave. Everyone say hi to Derek. Elsie, Derek, can you pan over to Aiden, and Aiden switch over and let the audience see you up there. Let's see if it works. Oh, is it happening? All right. Am I on? Let's see here. Oh, I'm not live. That's the problem. Yeah, there we go. So Aiden's going to help me demonstrate. Maybe you've heard of a new piece of technology called ChatGPT. Have any of you played with it before? Never? Well, you're in luck. You're going to get to try it out today. Aiden, can you switch over to ChatGPT on the big screen for us? We're asking Aiden to do a lot of multitasking right here. So ChatGPT is this AI language model. You can ask it all kinds of different questions. Aiden, you need to escape on the white keyboard. There you go, and then Alt-Tab to ChatGPT. There it is. This is ChatGPT, and when I first started playing with this, it reminded me of the moment a friend told me back in 2000 of a website called Google.com. That was mind-blowing when I first saw that. This, I think, is a bigger deal than that. And Aiden and I are going to play around with this. Aiden told me last night that he hasn't played around with it that much. I'm not sure if his English teachers agree with him. But first, let me say we're an educational institution, and absolutely sincerely, you should not use this tool to commit any sort of academic dishonesty. I think that it's going to be a tool that students use more and more, but I think you should disclose anytime you use it with your student or with your teachers. If you're going to use it, or if you think you might want to use it, you should have a conversation with your teachers before you do. But I want to show you some things that this can do. First, let's have it write a poem. Write a poem about Ewoks. Happy Star Wars Day, everyone. All right, let's see how it does. Deep within the forest green, where ancient trees and ferns convene. Is it still thinking, or do you need to? Oh yeah, you need to scroll. Lives a tribe of creatures, small, known to all as Ewoks. All. All right, let's do that again. Write a poem about Ewoks in perfect iambic pentameter. Ewoks in perfect iambic pentameter. You guys might not know this, but I'm trained as an English teacher, and I consider myself an expert on iambic pentameter. It hasn't gotten me very far with that expertise, by the way, but I'm really proud of it. Scroll up a little bit, or down, whatever you call it. Here we go. So iambic pentameter, in case you didn't know, it's a form of metrical verse. Shakespeare wrote a lot of his poems. Well, all of his poems and a lot of his verse is played in iambic pentameter. You'll notice that there are 10 syllables in each line. Every other syllable is accented, and in a Shakespearean sonnet, in iambic pentameter, the rhyme scheme would go A, B, A, B, B, C, B, C. So deep in the forest where the greenery thrives, amidst the trees where ancient ferns arise. That's like perfect iambic pentameter. That's pretty good. Lives a tribe of creatures known to few, the woodland Ewoks with fur of golden hue. Now, maybe you all think that ChatGPT found this poem somewhere on the internet and just published it. It's not the case. Like, it created this poem based upon what it knows about Ewoks and also based upon what it knows about iambic pentameter. Let's give it something a little more challenging. Aiden, help me prepare for a Star Wars themed party, and help me prepare a meal for a Star Wars themed party. Let's see what it gives us. So we're gonna make blue milk smoothies, Jedi Master salad, Darth Vader burger. Create a dark burger by adding charcoal powder to your ground beef mix. Has anyone ever used charcoal? Is that a thing? Does it taste terrible? What's charcoal powder? Anyway, Terry knows what charcoal powder. Wookiee cookies. Who's gonna make Wookiee cookies this weekend? I think we're gonna make some Wookiee cookies. All right, let's see. Give me some instructions on how to build a lightsaber. Let's see. Scroll up a little bit, a little more. Building a lightsaber is not an easy task. It requires a great deal of skill, knowledge, and technical expertise. However, if you're up for the challenge, here are the general steps on how to build a lightsaber. I know Nat has got a sweet lightsaber at home. I've seen it. It's incredible. But here we'll show you how to build a lightsaber. The one thing about ChatGPT is it often hallucinates. Like, it thinks it knows things that it doesn't really know. So you need to check with people who know what they're doing before you do something like that. How about, where's the one that I want? Give me a table, Aiden, give me a table with all of the Star Wars movies and all of the fuzzy characters in each movie. Okay, and I'm going to check in on the chat here. We got Ms. Keast, Brandon's here, Scott Johnson is here. Some names. Oh, there's Debbie Hale, trustee. Fantastic. Welcome. There's Frankie. These are all the fuzzy creatures in the Star Wars movies. Okay, one more. Aiden, let's play Who Wants to Be a Millionaire Star Wars themed. You might have to ask it like, let's play. And then we can play as a group and see how they do. You can have this thing like create computer code for you. It's incredible what it can do. All right. Sure, let's play Who Wants a Millionaire with a Star Wars theme. Are you ready to begin? Type yes. Okay, here's the first question. Scroll up a little bit. What is the name of the planet that Luke Skywalker calls his home in the Star Wars movies? Who in the chat, in the YouTube stream, know the answer to this? I lost my chat. Who is it? It's Tatooine? All right, put in B, let's see. Did we win any money? Oh, nice, we did. Okay, cool. Here's your next question. What's the name of the evil organization that is the primary antagonist of the original Star Wars trilogy? Are you guys going D? D. All right, D is in Delta. Let's try it. Oh, we were correct again. Let's quit while we're ahead. I want to show you one other game that you all can participate in, and those of you watching at home, you too can participate. Aiden, can you bring back the keynote? Go full screen there. No, it plays in the top middle. There it is. Yeah. And then go forward a few slides. All right. One more. You can see that we went in reverse chronological order of the AI cats that we found. The later ones were the AI cats, the cats that artificial intelligence created on its own about 5 years ago. And you can see how far along the technology has come this far. And it's going to be interesting as we watch it move forward. I want to thank you so much for being here. We got one more video and then our last welcome. Let's see, Aiden, can you click the next slide, please?
Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons, people gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication, and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
This, it's pretty amazing. This is the 8th year we have hosted TEDxYorkSchool. It started 8 years ago with my friend and colleague here, Grace Q, and we are just so excited to be here. First, I got to let you know, someone found a phone with the Eiffel Tower on it. If that's yours, I have it. I have to tell you, tonight you are about to see students, community members, and alumni stand on this stage and share their hearts and their stories with you. And I am just so proud of this group of people. You're in for a treat tonight. The way that they produced these talks was we decided to take on a new strategy and invite other community members to mentor our students through the process. And I got to give a big shout out to all the volunteer mentors who helped make that happen. Grace Q, everyone.
I wanted to also thank the tech team up in the nest up there and also our team backstage for bringing this production to you both in person and also to those of you online. Just a couple housekeeping things. If you're here in person, please make sure your phone is on silent. You can take photos if you want, but please don't use flash. It's extremely distracting. And in the same line of that, if you need to exit at any point, please use the back doors, not the side doors, unless it's a crisis emergency situation. And please be mindful of guests and the speakers. And then if you're online, please be active in the chat, leave your words of encouragement, because our speakers would like to read the comments when they're done with their talk.
So I want to speak directly to the York School students. This event is for you, and I hope you're inspired by watching these. And when this event is over, I want you to keep an eye out on your inbox, because we're going to very quickly begin the application process for the next speakers. I guarantee you that it's an incredible experience, one that you'll carry with you for the rest of your life. It is now my honor to introduce our MC for this evening. He's someone that I handpicked and begged him to be our MC, and I'm so glad that he's here and that we get, I had to share him with a lot of other activities that he works on. Everybody, please welcome Trevor Bernardino.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, and most importantly, fellow seekers of learning. I'm your host, Trevor Bernardino, and tonight I am welcoming you to our 8th annual TEDxYorkSchool events. I know what you're probably thinking. Did I use ChatGPT to write this introduction? Well, I can tell you with confidence, I did not use ChatGPT for this introduction. I used Mr. Brookhauser to write this introduction, and he used ChatGPT. As it turns out, we actually did try and use ChatGPT to write this introduction, but it didn't turn out too well. You know, the AI used a lot of impressive buzz-sounding words, so we discarded it for a human-written introduction. Here's an example of what the AI wanted me to say to you all.
This evening, we are gathered here to explore the power of the force within. This theme invites us to delve into the remarkable potential that resides within each of us and uncover the innate abilities that can transform our lives and the world around us.
That sounds nice, I guess. But I don't really buy it. And I'm not sure you guys are buying it either. Here's what I can promise. The people that you're going to see on the stage tonight are all human, just like those of you in the audience. Are you human? Just checking. For those of you in the live stream, you'll just have to take my word for it. These speakers up here that you're about to hear are not deepfakes. They're my friends. And they're going to share you their stories like we're all sitting around a campfire without the aid of technology. They're going to open up their hearts, their fully authenticated human hearts, and invite you to explore a part of them which makes them human. And we hope these stories can help you discover a part of you which makes you human too. That's the force within. You know, sometimes when I'm in public alone without friends or family, I feel pretty uncomfortable. Those are the people I would consider my safety net. Everyone has their own example of this, but have you ever wondered why we humans feel better and more comfortable around the people we love? Well, here's my good friend Orion Godfrey DeCayan to talk to you about our comfort zones.
Comfort zones are something that all creatures on Earth have. The Google definition is a place or situation where one feels safe or at ease without stress. While the Google definition gives us a broad perspective, comfort zones are much more important than we think, being more than just a place or situation. They can be defined as a feeling, like happiness or enthusiasm, a familiar face, like a parent or a best friend, or even as a physical object that you can hold and take with you, like a pencil or a necklace. While we all have a different range of comfort zones, one thing stays constant. Leaving these zones always proves difficult. And the reason leaving your little zone is so uncomfortable is because you're losing something that you depend upon. Say you're taking a math test and you can't find your favorite pencil. How would that make you feel? Would you have a sudden sense of panic? Oh no, where's my pencil? Say you have an expensive ring that was a gift from your best friend and you lost it. How would that make you feel? Would you search for it everywhere? Oh dear, where's my ring? This kind of panic is what happens when you leave that little safe space or zone that you rely upon. These zones are critical to keeping us safe, in our eyes, and in a manageable mood. Leaving these zones not only causes extreme discomfort, but also causes miscommunications and misunderstandings between you and the people you love. Being forced to do something that you have no taste or feel for pushes you a bit too far out of your comfort zone, but also can cause preventable actions to occur. Becoming mad at your friends and family for something that you could have prevented is a really hard feeling to come to terms with. This is why it's so important to understand when and where you have a comfort zone, and not to push yourself out of it. For example, this past winter, I was dragged unwillingly to a Salinas High football game and thought I was doing myself a huge favor by breaking out of a comfort zone and trying something fun and new. Wrong. The second I had to pay $10 for parking, I knew immediately something was wrong. I complained the entire way to the field, passing people that I didn't know and people that definitely didn't know me. Once I saw the amount of people in that little arena, I flipped out. I was pretty nasty the whole night. I was cold and I couldn't feel my toes, and I did not want to be there. I made it worse for everyone in my group by going, and I totally could have prevented it. I knew going that I would not have comfy, happy feelings being there, but I went anyways. The silver lining to this, however, is that I was able to say I had gone to a real football game in high school, despite facial expressions and pictures looking pretty horrific. Pretty much what I'm trying to convey is that it's important to know your boundaries with comfort zones and when to push yourself out of them and when not to push yourself out of them. Connecting back to what I said earlier, comfort zones can also be items or places. Think about your house. and how comfortable it is for you to come back to and unwind in. Your house is a space that you've made your own, and somewhere I hope you feel safe in and able to relax in. That's a type of comfort zone. However, a home is a completely different type of comfort zone. A home can be a person, not just a physical space in which you inhabit. Most people's homes are their significant others, best friends, or moms. And these are the people that you know you're comfortable around and would stick to like glue in a situation that pushes you out of your comfort zone. My home is my best friend Akira, who I stick to like a fly to one of those sweet sticky traps. For those of you that don't know Akira, she's a current junior here at York and one of the kindest and most calming people that I have ever met. When I feel out of sorts or uncomfortable or out of place in a situation that we're both in, I know I can rely on her to be a rock for me. I really wish she had been there for that football game, because I know for a fact that I would have had a much better time. Akira is my home in friend form, and a comfort person and zone for me to fall back on when I know I need that kind of support. Connecting back to what I said earlier, comfort zones can also be items, such as stuffed animals, necklaces, or anything you may have formed some sort of emotional bond to. I have an emotional support necklace, and I'm wearing her right now. This thing goes everywhere with me. I never take her off unless I have a sports game, but even then, I'd still like to sneak her under my jersey. When I'm nervous or anxious, I rub the pendants on my necklace to create a distraction for myself. I've also become accustomed to doing this in public, and especially in doctor's offices. I hate the eye doctor so much, it's crazy. No offense, Dr. Noonzig. But when I'm scared and anxious in the office, waiting for the imminent gust of wind that's going to be blown directly into my eyeball in around 5 minutes, rubbing the pendants on my necklace helps ground me and remind me that I'm safe and okay. These inanimate comfort zones are some of the most important comfort zones we'll have in our lives and help keep us safe in new places and dealing with new situations. A great way to define these comfort zones is by using Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yes, I know all of you Yorkies remember learning about Maslow's hierarchy of needs in sophomore English, but for those of you that haven't taken sophomore English at York, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a 5-tier psychological theory that represents a model of human needs. Needs at the bottom of the pyramid need to be fulfilled before you can work your way up, and it's a model for understanding motivations of human behavior. Besides that, it's also a great way to see how impactful comfort zones are in our lives and how much they affect our behavior. At the bottom of the pyramid is physiological needs, such as air, water, food, shelter, clothing, and sleep. Moving up is safety needs, such as resources, personal security, health, and employment. The third tier is love and belonging, such as family, friendship, intimacy, and connection. Next is esteem, such as respecting not only others, but yourself, self-esteem, status, recognition, and freedom. And at the very top of the pyramid is self-actualization, the desire to become the best version of yourself. Now, where do comfort zones fall? In my opinion, they fall in all 5 levels. Physiological needs can be knowing you have safety and comfort in the amenities and spaces around you, and have all of those within your reach, helping you ascend to safety needs. These zones put you in your own little bubble, keeping you safe and comforted from everything else going on around you, helping you ascend to love and belonging. Having family and friends around you that feel like home to you and keep you comfortable bumps you up to esteem. Being comfortable in who you are and where you are in life helps you reach self-actualization, and then you're at the top of the pyramid, fully comfortable in the version of you that is the best it can be. These zones help us reach the top of the pyramid and help us become the best versions of ourselves that we can be. These zones are vital to us, and I can't imagine living without them. They keep us safe, happy, and able to self-actualize. It's important for us to grow out of them and expand them and break them. But just having them here for us is the best thing we can do to keeping ourselves safe and happy. Thank you.
Everyone has a story about closing one door to opening another. For me, that was karate. I used to go to the same dojo as Bodhi, going every Tuesday and Thursday to practice Tung Sudo. But I let go of that to pursue soccer. Bodhi, on the other hand, told me that he took a risk running for youth governor of California. Despite not winning, this opened many more doors for him. He took a risk, which paid off. And now, here's Bodhi Brennings to talk about risk-taking.
I don't often share the story of why I have a scar on my left eyebrow. Even if you know me personally, you may never have noticed it. One of the first times I went surfing, I became separated from my surfboard. And when I tried to retrieve it, I noticed an unusually large wave heading straight for me. It turns out that my surfboard was underneath the wave, and when it came back up, its bottom fin hit me in the face. I had taken a risk. I had tried something new, and I was rewarded for it with a literal slap to the face. From the perspective of a child, why would you ever want to try anything new again after something like that had just happened to you? I grew up in Salinas, and if you did too, or if you grew up in any of the surrounding area, you may recognize this. If you don't, then this is Dennis the Menace Park, and I, along with many of you, carry the shared experience of growing up there, exploring such a big and confusing world. Now, this train has been sitting in Dennis the Menace Park since 1956. And over the years, children have had the opportunity to climb on it, play on it, etc. In 2013, however, the city decided that the train was too dangerous and constructed this. This is a fence, and I'm showing you this because it's a representation of an idea, an expression of values. Now, the city decided to single out this train because, luckily, there's nothing else in the park that could ever be cause for concern. Now, I'm a very opinionated person, but this isn't a manifesto, and I'm not trying to get anything torn down. At least not this evening. Once again, I'm showing you this because it's a representation of ideas. And a park with a fence in it sends a much different message to a child than a park without a fence. Now, there are several opportunities throughout a person's life during which their capacity for risk-taking can be stunted. And even as children gravitate away from the playground and towards the classroom, we still find ways to discourage the kind of risks that our kids want to take. During his TEDx talk, John Green stated his view of education. I felt like education was just a series of hurdles that had been erected before me that I had to jump over in order to achieve adulthood. That education was not an achievement in itself, but rather a means to other achievements, like getting into a good school or getting a good job, whatever that meant. And what happens when these two objectives, education for the success of the learner and education for the success of their grade point average, come into conflict? Which one of these things has to be more important? Well, from things like grade requirements to get scholarships or go down to sports teams or getting into the college you want, I mean, we do need some way of measuring whether our students understand the material, but we put a lot of emphasis on the method we've chosen. And so what happens when that method, which we've showered with such obsessive importance, what happens when it could go down? Why even take a risk like that? Why not just take the path of least resistance and not take any chances in that kind of environment? Even if this isn't how you think, we've created an environment where somebody will think like this. And what kind of lesson will that lead them? Will that teach them in life? Now, could it lead them to, I don't know, not tell their loved ones how they really feel or pursue their dreams? Because those can be risks too. In fact, one of the greatest regrets of people on their deathbed include things like, I wish I had the courage to live a life that was true to myself and not the life that others expected of me. I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. And that gives way to questions like, what if my friends never remembered me or even wanted to stay in touch with me? I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. What if nobody cared about the way I felt? And what if people stopped liking me if I stopped being what they expected of me? And if we have the courage to take these kinds of risks, then we'll never, if we don't have the courage to take these kinds of risks, then we'll never know the answers to those kinds of questions. And if we've already decided that not doing these things are regrettable, then why even ask such questions in the first place? One of the first things that comes up when you Google risk-taking is criminal activity such as stealing, vandalism, or trespassing. And let me be clear, I'm not encouraging anyone to do any of those things, but rather to think about the thousands of risks that we encounter every day, some of which might just be worth taking. So why not do something like run for youth governor, or go paragliding, or spend a month in Paris, or join a sports team, or give a TED Talk, or whatever the equivalent for you is. And that's why I think we should take down the barriers that tell us taking chances are just too dangerous and get aboard that train.
When Rose told me that she was writing her speech on how the more choices you have, the harder it is to pick what you want, I thought she was literally going to talk about the Cheesecake Factory menu. You all know it, the 20-plus page menu with over 250 options. The first time I went there, I literally thought they were handing me the Oxford Dictionary. But after hearing her speech, I now realize that everything in life is like the Cheesecake Factory menu. So now, here is Rose Finn to talk about the paradox of choice.
I hope you're all ready, because today we are going to be solving not one, but two paradoxes. The first one I like to call the paradox of a perfectionistic procrastinator, a paradox that is constantly relevant in my life. So back in January, when I found out I'd be speaking tonight, you can imagine the sort of things that were going through my mind. I was ready to throw up at the prospect of speaking in front of all of you, and simultaneously ready to scream and cry from excitement. But once the initial shock wore off, I knew I had to write the most amazing TED Talk. I was going to change your lives. So I sit down to start, and then suddenly remember how nervous I am about the event, and my transition looks a little something like this. Determined, overwhelmed. So I set that aside for a few weeks. Now we're a couple months before May, and I'm once again staring in front of my blank screen, telling myself, Rose, you really have to get this done. And I'm like, yeah, but, there's just no creative juices flowing at the moment. So I do the only logical thing. I Google how to stop procrastinating and proceed to spend the next 30 minutes reading that instead of actually working. Ingenious, I know. But this, unlike most, was not entirely a waste of time, because while doing my important research, I discovered this very interesting concept, the paradox of choice. So I'm sure some of you in here have heard about this concept, but it was first introduced by the accomplished psychologist Barry Schwartz in his book, The Paradox of Choice: Why More is Less. The essential idea isn't too complicated. So if you have to make a choice, most people would probably prefer to have more options to choose from. The logic seems pretty sound. I mean, adding more choices doesn't take anything away from you, and you have the freedom to choose an option that is better for you, right? Of course, this is true to an extent. But the paradox of choice is the observation that being given too many options can leave you feeling more unsatisfied than if you had been given fewer options. This is something that all of us deal with on a daily basis, whether or not we realize it. In my case, my procrastination was mainly driven by an overwhelm of choice. A blank page is literally a source of infinite possibilities, aka infinite decisions to make. I often found myself paralyzed by the hundreds of little easy choices I had to make to start a project, so I would avoid the project altogether. You may have experienced the same thing while ordering from a too large menu or struggling to choose an outfit from a closet bursting with clothes. Much more serious than these minor choices, however, are the defense mechanisms that we develop to deal with the resulting decision fatigue. There are a vast number of responses individuals can have to an overwhelm of choice. This includes procrastination, as I mentioned, retail therapy, poor eating habits and disordered eating, and workaholism. I already explained my experience, but some of you in here may struggle with procrastination because you just have so many things to do and you can't decide where to begin. Others may struggle with procrastination because at the end of the day, you are so mentally drained from social media, advertising, the internet. How many of you in here like to shop online? Retail therapy, particularly online, is often in the form of endless scrolling through digital shops, searching for the best deal or a better item. Instead of having to choose between two items, you may simply decide to purchase both, despite that never being the original intention. Poor eating habits can emerge from decision fatigue because when fast food is so much faster and more readily available than healthier alternatives, anyone would be tempted to get takeout after a long day. Poor eating habits can also go completely in the other direction. When we feel like we're losing control over our own lives, we tend to turn to the one thing we can always control, ourselves. This is where disordered eating and potentially eating disorders can develop, from that desire to regain a sense of control over our own lives. Workaholism can emerge from a similar desire for control. Work can be a tool, albeit a dangerous one, to deal with the overwhelm we sense in our lives. The reason I say it's dangerous is because productivity is a good thing. You can't be successful without discipline. And that makes creating that line between a healthy break and laziness so much more difficult, especially when there are so many ways that work creeps into our personal lives. Even when we're trying to relax or develop other aspects of our lives, there's always devices near us and the constant temptation to check our email or check our grades. In moments when we should be recharging, we are still mentally absorbed in work. Yet another layer to this whole concept are the societal implications, essentially the effects of individual defense mechanisms, all combined on a massive scale. The combined effect of retail therapy is a culture of overconsumption and the spread of fast fashion. The statistics on this are just shocking. The average American throws away 81 pounds of clothes per year, and 88% of Americans confess to shopping with fast fashion brands. America has a reputation for high obesity rates, and a lot of that can be attributed to decision fatigue. There was also that horrible trend of diet culture in the early 2000s that encouraged and profited off of people's desire to fix themselves. Honestly, I could spend my whole time talking about this issue, but there's so much more, so I'll keep going. Workaholism is an interesting one in that our culture very much celebrates the hustle, and there's a sort of pride in how little sleep you got, how many hours you worked last week, how few sick days you've taken, etc. The funniest thing to me is that hustle culture isn't even about the product of your work. It's just about grinding the gears. Honestly, there's so many ways that the paradox of choice impacts our lives that I was struggling to choose what to include in this talk. Even if you turn to self-care, you find the same mind-numbing list of options. I mean, you'd think surely there'd be some relief in a field whose sole purpose is to improve your life. Endless aisles of face creams, masks, products, each promising you a clearer face and brighter complexion. Countless self-help books to inspire you to improve your life. Every New Year's an opportunity to fix your life, and end up changing too many things at once, ultimately stuck back in the same place you started. You try to just relax and watch some TV. Oh, guess what? You're gonna have to choose from over 1,000 channels. It's ridiculous. Honestly, the biggest revelation I had doing research for this talk, and Barry Schwartz discusses this in his book, is that with innumerable options, your expectations for the result go up drastically. You expect a perfect outcome, and when the outcome is inevitably underwhelming, you feel unsatisfied. Not only that, but you look for something to blame. And ultimately, the only thing you can find to blame is yourself. I live an incredibly blessed life, but I know all too well that sinking feeling where you just know that everything wrong in your life is your fault. You know, if you had put in a couple extra hours or made a different decision, you could be living that perfect life you want so badly. I know I'm not alone in this sentiment when I see the statistics on mental health in our country, with over 20% of US adults and 16% of teenagers suffering from some type of mental illness. And that's just those who've been diagnosed. Truly, I look at our world and I can't help but feel that so much of our general unhappiness is generated by our unattainable expectations, generated by simple daily decisions. Many of us have a tendency to battle symptoms instead of addressing underlying issues. When we beat ourselves up for being lazy or spending too much money, it's important to recognize that, yes, these are things that need to change. But if we only try to tackle these symptoms, the roots of our problems are still there. You cannot kill a weed by cutting off the flower. You will never solve your problems without addressing why they emerged in the first place. Okay, so this is going to take some deep reflection. So here are some questions to get you started. Firstly, what are the biggest stressors in your life right now? Maybe it's work, maintaining a relationship, worrying about the health of a loved one, lingering guilt. And how is this stress manifesting itself in your life? Have you set up invisible walls to shield yourself or felt an intense need for control? Think about all the choices you have to make on a daily basis. Tiny choices that seem insignificant until you start to become them. Get in the habit of really being aware of all the choices you have to make so that when you catch yourself procrastinating, you can realize what's stopping you. The overwhelm of impossible expectations. At last, you can put down the Instagram reels and get right back to work. Well, maybe not right back. The night is young. Thank you.
When I think of STEM at York School, I think of Normandy. She's the definition of STEM. Technician, robotics, mathematician, and science enthusiast all come to mind. But not only is she a woman in STEM, she's so many other things too. She's a tenor at York Choir. She's part of the knitting club. She is a future rocket scientist. And most recently, she's a pun meister. But not once have I thought it was wrong for her to be all these many things. And yet, some people in her past think differently. So now, here is Normandy Filsick to tell you about her struggles with her identity in all these many areas.
As a child, I was always allowed to dress myself in the morning. And as you can see, it went horribly from the start. Nowadays, I like to think I'm a better stylist, but I still have my issues. I'm the kind of person who worries a lot about what I wear. Not that I only wear name brand clothes, just that I can't help considering what others will think of me. People do judge a book by its cover. And I'd like that cover to at least somewhat reflect what the actual contents of my personality are. Clearly, as a 7-year-old, this is what I thought that meant. The problem is, I don't have one style that really reflects my whole personality, so my closet is all over the place with different looks. A lot of these clothes are very conventionally feminine. I love my long, flowing dresses and floral patterned blouses. But I can't wear most of this on a daily basis because, unfortunately, long, flowing skirts are a hazard when you're working with gears and chains in robotics. And I don't want to spill bleach on my favorite blouse in a chem lab. Much to my dismay, my fashion sense and love of STEM do not mesh neatly with one another. STEM has been a passion of mine for as long as I can remember. By a show of hands, how many of you have seen the show Mythbusters? All right, you all pass. That was my favorite show growing up, and I would watch it basically every day. And Carrie Byron, in the center there, was my absolute favorite. She's pretty, with gorgeous red hair, killer intellect, and most importantly, conducted cool experiments involving explosions. In retrospect, I probably attached to her because she was frequently the only female host. But regardless, she was my idol, and I wanted to be just like her. So I played with puzzles on understanding basic mechanics. I attended Coder Dojo at Hartnell College to learn programming. I volunteered for a company that made little programmable robots for kids when I was still a kid myself. That's what I was holding in that first photo. I did math competitions for fun. Like, I would actually skip PE to sit in the corner of a room and do more math. Weird, right? Now, I bet you're starting to get an idea of what I was like. That I was always holed up inside, tinkering on some scientific kit. That I was fluent in Java by age 10, a prodigy. That as soon as I fell in love with STEM, I concerned myself with nothing else from that day forth. That's how a lot of media portrays people in STEM. And that's how I imagined someone in STEM for the longest time. In particular, my idea was almost exclusively, overwhelmingly male. This isn't necessarily wrong, given gender statistics. As we can see from this infographic from the STEM Women Organization, there are only 35 women for every 100 STEM positions. That's almost twice as many men. This disparity starts early. Research shows that by second grade, kids are forming negative associations between girls and math. That means there are 8-year-old kids out there who are already making these associations. Middle school is one of the biggest leaks in the STEM pipeline, where girls lose the most interest. I was very close to being one of those girls who lost interest in, well, everything once middle school hit. It was an incredibly difficult time for me, as it was a time of great discovery, or in other words, great confusion. I was discovering things about the world, and more distressingly, about myself. For example, I discovered that I wanted to pursue a career in STEM among the slew of interests I held, but I was also discovering that I was queer, that I was incredibly affected by my ADHD, that I suffered from chronic depression and generalized anxiety, all with a dollop of insomnia on top. Keep in mind, this was a mountain of internal searching, diagnosis, and discovery I ran into headlong in the midst of a global pandemic. In middle school was when we had our first block on the Renaissance, and that was when I really learned about Leonardo da Vinci beyond just the name. A man also incredibly all over the place. Inventor, engineer, artist, genius, massive procrastinator who frequently abandoned projects right before finishing them. Also, fun fact, a gay man. Da Vinci, Renaissance man, the sensational intellect with a strong personality. I wanted to be that. And I was inspired that the quirks of this great historical figure, quirks I saw in myself, never hindered his career. But there's one grand difference between Da Vinci and me. He was a man, and I am very much not. And because of this simple difference, All of the traits Da Vinci flourished for transformed curiously into things the world said were wrong with me. Some things were told to me outright, that I needed to focus more or tone it down a little. But other things no one had to tell me because I taught myself through observation, through what I saw in the world, on TV, or what I read in books. From the few female role models I saw and connected with, I learned that if I wanted to make it, to prove myself to the world of STEM, I had to throw everything else out, including my femininity and my personality. Again, no one had to tell me this because I absorbed the knowledge simply by existing in the world. I don't doubt that many, many other girls have come to the same conclusion based off the way media portrays the STEM field and women in STEM. That you need to work twice as hard to make up for being a girl, or that you need to apologize for this difference you were born with. The world loves to tell people, everyone, that there are aspects of your identity that despite being inherent and unchangeable, you will spend your whole life apologizing for. Because of how supportive my family and teachers were growing up, it wasn't until I was older, coming out of the pandemic, that I began to really notice the daily moments of misogyny in the world around me. I was crushed. I was shocked. I was ashamed. And then I was shocked that I felt ashamed. I wasn't the one in the wrong. Other people were making assumptions about me, that I needed an explanation for something I already knew, or that I wouldn't care about the things they encouraged my male classmates to do. Once I noticed the blatant, I became more in tune with the subtle. The small STEM communities I did have access to were largely male, and in that way, largely unaccepting of anyone else. It was an unspoken rule, but I felt it in the friend groups and conversations, like somehow my inability to make small talk about sports or cars made me unfit to be in STEM. Regardless, I persisted. And as I processed these events and processed my reactions to them, I came to a realization. There will always be people who exclude against or judge us for aspects of our identity that we can't change, and they are the ones in the wrong. But it was me, myself, my own brain that was responsible for the way I internalized their reactions. More than anyone else, I was the one pushing myself to fit into the small box of what I thought was correct. Okay, I say I came to this realization, but it was really with the help of my therapist. And in response, she armed me with two of the most important, and in my opinion, most difficult to master skills. First, dialectical thinking, and second, radical acceptance. Dialectical thinking is the ability to acknowledge all sides of a scenario and allow contradicting ideas, facts, or realities to exist without one invalidating another and without trying to find some blurry middle ground. Radical acceptance is the ability to come to terms with the extremes of a situation by acknowledging what you do or do not have control over. These two mindfulness techniques go hand in hand. Dialectical thinking says you can have a million different feelings in response to something all at once, and radical acceptance says that all of them are okay. Now, why was my therapist bringing this up when I was talking about internalized misogyny? Because this is how I would combat it, by saying yes. Yes, I like math, engineering, and physics, and I have other girly interests. Yes, I'm queer, and I still like to present myself in ways that are typically feminine. Yes, I value my liveliness and love of learning as core aspects of my identity, even when I'm too depressed to engage with them. I can give myself permission to be a million different things and acknowledge that I am still one single, beautiful, unique person. The world will, at one point or another, try to tell everyone that there is something about themselves that they should apologize for, that should make them feel ashamed, that there are aspects of your identity that don't fit together, and it's your responsibility to make yourself more palatable. When it's just one thing, it feels easy to turn around into something excusable within the context of a larger personality. But when it feels like everything you've built yourself on defies what is expected of you, any sense of personal security is shaky at best. It is a terrifyingly thin line between apologizing for being a girl, for being gay, for being this ethnicity or having that disability, and then having to apologize just for being alive. Why are some of us told we are too much? Is it fair to limit someone to one side of a whole personality? Did anyone tell Leonardo da Vinci he needed to tone it down a little? If they did, I'm sure they feel silly now, seeing how we revere him in all his variety. The boxes we put ourselves in are made of cardboard, not set in stone. They can be and should be broken down. It is difficult to deconstruct the shame we direct onto ourselves. Difficult to master radical acceptance of the radically different people within one person. But the first step to being able to recognize the paradoxical beauty in the world and in others is to be able to celebrate it within ourselves. And so, tonight, I invite you to think about two aspects of your identity that don't seem to fit together, or that might contradict each other a bit. Hold them next to each other and see the ways they interact. Consider how the contrast between these two aspects, interests, or labels enhance one another. Now, take this paradox you hold within yourself and embrace it. Thank you.
In 1796, Thomas Jefferson received a box of bones he couldn't identify. A long, sharp claw reminded him of a lion, but the arm bones suggested a larger animal, one about 3 meters long. Thinking it might be a huge, unknown species of North American lion, Jefferson warned explorers Lewis and Clark to keep an eye out for this mysterious predator. But Jefferson's box of bones didn't come from a lion. They came from an extinct giant sloth. Prehistoric ground sloths first appeared around 35 million years ago. Dozens of species lived across North, Central, and South America, alongside other ancient creatures like mastodons and giant armadillos. Some ground sloths, like the megalonychid, were cat-sized, but many were massive. Jefferson's sloth, Megalonyx, weighed about a ton, and that was small compared to Megatherium, which could reach 6 metric tons, as much as an elephant. They ambled through the forests and savannas, using their strong arms and sharp claws to uproot plants and climb trees, grazing on grasses, leaves, and prehistoric avocados. In fact, we might not have avocados today if not for the giant sloths. Smaller animals couldn't swallow the avocado's huge seed, but the sloths could, and they spread avocado trees far and wide. Ground sloths flourished for millions of years, but around 10,000 years ago, they started disappearing, along with the Western Hemisphere's other giant mammals. Researchers think that ground sloths could have been pushed out by an oncoming ice age, or competition with other species, maybe humans, who arrived in the region around the time most of the sloths went extinct. Some of the smaller sloths did survive and migrated to the treetops. Today, there are 6 species left, living in the rainforest canopies of Central and South America. Hanging out in the trees is a good way to avoid predators, and there are plenty of leaves to eat. But this diet has its drawbacks. Animals extract energy from food and use that energy to move around, maintain their body temperature, keep their organs working, and all the other activities necessary for survival. But leaves don't contain much energy, and that which they do have is tough to extract. Most herbivores supplement a leafy diet with higher energy foods like fruit and seeds. But sloths, especially three-toed sloths, rely on leaves almost exclusively. They've evolved finely tuned strategies for coping with this restricted diet. First, they extract as much energy from their food as possible. Sloths have a multi-chambered stomach that takes up a third of their body, and depending on the species, they can spend 5 to 7 days or even weeks processing a meal. The other piece of the puzzle is to use as little energy as possible. One way sloths do this is, of course, by not moving very much. They spend most of their time eating, resting, or sleeping. They descend from the canopy just once a week for a bathroom break. When sloths do move, it's not very fast. It would take a sloth about 5 minutes to cross an average neighborhood street. This unhurried approach to life means that sloths don't need very much muscle. In fact, they have about 30% less muscle mass than other animals their size. Sloths also use less energy to keep themselves warm because their body temperature can fluctuate by about 5 degrees Celsius. Less than a cold-blooded reptile, but more than most mammals. These physical and behavioral adaptations minimize the sloth's energy expenditure, or metabolic rate. Three-toed sloths have the slowest metabolism of any mammal. The giant panda is second slowest, and two-toed sloths come in third. Moving slowly has allowed sloths to thrive in their treetop habitat. But it's also made the sloths themselves a great habitat for other organisms, including algae, which provides a little extra camouflage, and maybe even a snack. Sloths may not be giant anymore, but that doesn't make them any less remarkable.
Music is a wonderful thing. No matter what language a song is sung in, or the instruments that were used, you'd be able to understand the feel of the song and hopefully enjoy it. Many of you probably have gone to Disneyland, and most recently, the Galaxy's Edge, or also known as Star Wars Land. Our next speaker is John Dennis, a music executive with Walt Disney Imagineering. And through music, he says, helps tell the story of a ride. So now, here's our guest speaker, John Dennis, to talk about how music is an art form of storytelling.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. First of all, big shout out to Trevor. Isn't he doing a great job tonight? Excellent. And big thank you to Grace and Kevin for the invitation to speak here tonight. Music as a storytelling device is an interesting evolution of storytelling and music as art forms. So I'm going to kind of break them each down and kind of go through what each of them mean to me, and sort of hopefully at the end we'll all come together and meet in the same place. As Trevor was saying, I'm an Imagineer. I work for Walt Disney Imagineering. Walt Disney Imagineering is the design firm, the design arm of the Walt Disney Company that creates, brainstorms, designs, and delivers experiences to our Disney theme parks, resorts, and cruise ships around the world. Being an Imagineer is a pretty incredible job. And for the past 30 years, I've not only got to be an Imagineer, but I got to focus on music. Music as part of a storytelling team is a pretty incredible and pretty daunting responsibility at times. Walt Disney had a quote that said, it's kind of fun to make the impossible possible. And that continues to be a motto we have at Walt Disney Imagineering. And when we start to think of it in that way, I think of this kid some 50 years ago, standing at Walt Disney World, not having any idea what was out in front of him. I hope my sister forgives me for putting that photo up and having it streamed live. Sorry, Sandy. But Walt Disney Imagineering has given me the opportunity to examine storytelling and the roots of storytelling through music in a couple different lenses. For me, I get to explore world cultures and go around the world and put the lens of music, within that. And, I'm very fortunate to have the role I do and get to work with the people I do. A variety of cultures, a variety of inputs, and a total variety of artists I get to approach and try and bring them into the storytelling realm we have at Imagineering. So let's talk a little bit about story. We all have our stories. Today is a story. We're all sharing this story here tonight. Let's talk about your story, or maybe my story. Maybe you woke up this morning and you were a little grumpy, and your story started maybe not on the right foot that you wanted to because you woke up earlier than you wanted to, or maybe you were a little hungry when you went to bed. You woke up even hungrier. But after a little breakfast and maybe a little, hug from your wife or your mom or your dad, your story changes and it gets a little bit better. Each of our stories is incredibly personal. My story starts every day with my wife and my children, and I'd like you to meet Winston and Cooper. Winston and Cooper are our family pets, and they are terrific partners, and I tell stories to Winston and Cooper all the time. Now, admittedly, Winston and Cooper aren't always the best listeners. Sometimes by the end of my story, this is what they look like. They're happy to take a nap. But it brought me to the question of telling stories to start at the beginning. Why do we tell stories? Anybody have any ideas why we might tell stories? Well, for me, I went and took a look and sort of tried to figure out where stories began. What were the origins of stories? Even before ancient man was able to have a common language, we told stories. Admittedly, back in the day, some of those stories were really important, and they were mostly about survival. Trying to convey to your friend, hey, where is that, that berry we ate yesterday? That was pretty good. Or, hey, did you see that big hairy thing that ate Larry? Have you seen that around anymore? I really want to avoid that guy. But my story today is starting from the me standpoint. I talked about Winston and Cooper and how my day began. And, I was a little grumpy this morning, I'll fully admit it. But after a hug from my wife and hugging my sons and, a little cup of coffee, and then I gave some love to Winston and Cooper, my day got better. Well, my day got better when I fed Winston and Cooper. They were happy to see me when I came out and actually brought them some food. Now, when we got into storytelling at that point, I was talking with Kevin a little bit at the beginning of this whole process about where do stories lead us, and we've talked about why humans tell stories just a little bit, and I'm going to go a little bit further on that. The reason I believe some of those stories got told early on, as I said, was about survival, but it was also about some of the same things I just talked about today, the everyday things, sharing the common experiences we have in life and sharing those common moments that bring us together. And some of those stories get carried forward. Some are oral traditions that actually tell the stories of our ancestors and have been told for thousands of years. And that brings me to the point of how people tell stories. Right now I'm telling you a story through an oral tradition, spoken word. Linguists and biologists have looked at the human condition, and there's no real solid estimate about when humans actually began to talk. And you think about that from a storytelling standpoint. How do you communicate without being able to talk? Because they reach back and they say it's probably tens of thousands, if not millions of years ago that humans actually may have spoken their first words. We don't have any good records of it. There wasn't, a phone to talk into and make a voice recording. The voice recorders, any kind of recording device wasn't actually created until the middle of the 19th century. So as we started talking about story, I said, okay, how do humans tell stories? Oral tradition, that's one. That's the spoken word. We're doing it today. People have been doing it for tens of thousands, if not millions of years. Another storytelling form is painting. All across Europe, in Asia, in Africa, they have great records. Now, we may not have a great records of when the first people began to speak, but we do have some pretty good records that scientists have found about when early man began to paint. Some 40,000 years ago, they've discovered paintings on the walls of caves in France, on stone tablets in Namibia, even on rocks in Australia. And these tell the story and start to basically show you the storytelling prowess of early man. And it's pretty impressive. But that wasn't the only way. Then we finally moved on. After man had been doing their own artwork all over, about 5,000 years ago, the human condition came together and we started putting together a written language. Early cuneiforms, hieroglyphs, and eventually a common alphabet, depending on the language or the region you were in. And we came up with a written word, and we were able to write down our ideas and continue to share them with our family and friends. Which brings me to telling stories with music. The one thing about music that is really fascinating to me is that those other forms of storytelling are wonderful, but they're a little passive when it comes to the receiver. You take in whatever story I'm telling you. You may have emotional reaction, you may not. But telling stories with music is kind of a visceral experience. When I first started thinking about when did we first hear, about stories with music, I think about the lullabies. I think about just the little simple stories our parents used to sing to us, or maybe you as parents sing to your kids to put people to sleep. That sounds wrong. To put your children and help your children fall asleep at night. I sing them to myself inside my head. I sing them to myself, and it actually does. It's a very calming moment to sit down, focus yourself, and actually have a little tune play through your head. No, we're not going to sing any lullabies. Kevin and I talked about it. I didn't want to. We're midway through the program. We didn't want to bring that up. Start a nap time. That's not quite right. So here are some of the earliest music instruments that have actually been found. Remember I said the written word was only started let's be generous. Let's say the written word was started about 10,000 years ago. Here's two examples of flutes that man carved and were found in Europe. And the carbon dating dates the flutes around 42,000 years ago, well before we had an organized language, in written form. Pretty remarkable. As we go on, come to find, and I was trying to figure out, why do we think early man was actually trying to have to play an instrument, to create music? The best idea I can come up with is something I heard this morning. I walked outside. We live in Southern California, and we drove up today. But as I walked outside with the dogs, I started hearing a bird sing. And I realized that was probably the impetus and the inspiration and to want to create music, the music they heard in nature. And I thought more about it. I thought, what else has a song in nature? I've stuck my head in the ocean. I've heard a whale song. I've walked through a forest and I've heard tree frogs singing. And it's beautiful sound. And they have a chorus of cicadas singing along with them. And I realized I can only imagine what early man felt when they heard those songs and it stirred emotions in them the way we have music stir emotion in us now. So we've been sitting for a while. So I wanted to do a little bit of a visceral exercise with everybody in the room. You don't have to, but feel free to get up. We're going to do a little marching. And I want to do a little experiment with you and talk about the power of music and how it kind of can take us on and channel us, even as a group. So if you want to, stand up. We're going to do a little marching in place. Don't knock your friends over. What I want you to do is, this is a short clip. It's not going to be long, and the video won't be on you for very long, is we're going to march in place. So I'm going to play a piece of music, and I want to let the music kind of take you along. Go ahead and march. Kind of feel how the music is directed. Yeah, there you go. And your arms start swinging. I didn't even plan this. Oh, look at you. Kevin, I think we need to get a marching band together here. This is wild. Okay, stop right there. Don't sit down just yet. As you did that, your brain kind of fell in line with the music and the motor motions you were making, and you were getting little hits of dopamine in your brain, and your body's going, yeah, that's it. All right, I can do this. This is easy. Okay, we're going to do it again. I'm going to play you the same piece of music, but this time, I want you to try and not follow the music. I'm hearing some gasps. Sorry, I didn't mean this. I was told there'd be no math. No. What I want you to do is try and not follow the music and kind of notice what your body does. So here we go. That same piece of music, you've heard it before, but this time, stay away from the beat. Come on. Oh, that's it. You know, this is a lot hard. Wait a minute. Okay, all right. Thank you for humoring me. Sit down. Please have a seat. Okay, that was a lot harder than I expected it to be. And that is going to be on YouTube now forever and ever, me dancing like that. But I realized, and I wanted to sort of make the point with the people in the room, that there's a cognitive kind of disconnect that happens when your body tries to fight against some music it's hearing, especially when you get into it. If you're an adult and you've been driving for any amount of time, you may have had a favorite song come on the radio, and the next thing you know, the music told your brain to push that foot to the pedal a little bit more. And let's just say, when you get pulled over the next time, now you have a little bit of information, and you can just tell the very kind police officer, or I'm sure will understand, that it was a biological imperative. You had no choice. You had to speed. The music was telling you to do so. So all of that being said, it's wonderful how we are kind of innately musical creatures. In that, I like to believe that that statement has a lot more truth in it than I like to believe sometimes. If you think about yourself, we're all kind of rhythm machines. We have heartbeats beating, every one of us right now. Hopefully everyone. Good? Yeah? Your heart's beating, pumping blood through your body. That's keeping a rhythm. You're breathing in, you're breathing out. Your brain's sending your lungs a rhythm to keep the oxygen flowing. And we all got up this morning, and we'll all go to sleep tonight following our circadian rhythm. So humans are kind of rhythm machines when you really think about it. The beauty of that is when you combine a visual image, you give yourself some more input. I mean, we were doing physical input with that march. If we take and give you a visual image now, we can start to create some other ideas that happen. So come with me. We're gonna go on a little journey. I'm gonna take you to an alley in a big city, and kind of scary, maybe not. Take a look at the image and kind of soak it in and kind of think about it. I'm gonna play you 2 pieces of music. Now, after each piece of music plays, it's gonna be the same image. I wanna hear from you. I wanna hear what you feel, what you think, what the music told you about what's going on here. So as you hear this music, and as you look at this place, what is the music starting to tell you? Any ideas? France, I heard that. Why France? The instrument. Okay. What are some of the more basic things? Does the music make this place feel scarier or safer? Safer. Oh yeah, good. Does the music make you want to go down this alley? Maybe it's not as scary as it once was. Yeah. Anything happening in here? What do you think? Restaurant, romance. Ooh la la. All right. I love it. Okay, we're going to stick with the same image. Remember those thoughts? Romance. Yeah. Now we're going to play some different music, and I want to see how it changes your perception, how it changes your story of this place. Okay, what's happening here now? The Kid Crusader. What else? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the other ones. Conflict. Does this place feel safe still, or is it maybe a little dangerous? Yeah. Isn't it amazing how A, it made you feel, but B, look at all these little stories you guys created out of thin air. You were presented with this image not more than 2 minutes ago. And with a couple different pieces of music, you started weaving new ideas. You started creating new stories. Well done. You guys are impressive. Emotional storytelling. Well, here's what music does best. Music, when it comes, especially when it's married with an image, is an emotional storyteller. Everybody here, anybody seen a movie in the past 5 years? All right. You laugh, but I had somebody in an audience once go, no, I don't like movies. Okay. No judgment, that's fine. If you ever get a chance when you're at home, the next time you're watching your favorite movie, look at a movie that you've watched for years. Take 5 minutes of the movie, turn the sound off, and just watch the screen and watch the image. It becomes a different movie-going experience. Music is the emotional storyteller, giving you cues about what's going to happen, how you're supposed to feel about what happened, and where things are going. So as an emotional storyteller, music has this wonderful power to kind of, as I say, it kind of bypasses your brain and goes straight to your heart. It kind of taps into us in a way that is hard to explain, but I kind of tie it back to the human rhythm machine idea, that we are all connected to music in a way that we don't really understand, but it is a great tool for emotional storytelling. So speaking of emotional storytelling, my wife sent me these videos a couple days ago, and I said, well, this is fun. Let me close out with this. This is Winston. You met Winston earlier, waiting for food. And I put a couple pieces of music to Winston's video just so we can have a little fun and give Winston a little more character and a little more, bravado, so you can see his range as a dog actor. Okay, that's not the impression I want to leave with you of Winston. So I found another piece of music, and this is more, and I think my wife actually told me the other day, she goes, this is now Winston's official theme. I love that dog. So really, as I wrap up here, what I wanted to sort of share with you is we're all storytellers. Each and every one of you have a story, and each of these students have a story. I'm honored to be on the stage with them. They are an impressive group of people. But also, there is no greater story, no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you, Maya Angelou. And so I want you to remember, every day is a story in your life. And not every day's good, not every day's bad. But if you're writing the story of your life and you come upon a time where you're not sure where to go, why don't you put on a piece of music? It might change your point of view and give you some new ideas. Have a great night.
My first memory of Brianna was in my freshman year, when she gave her sophomore speech. She talked about one of her favorite memories, her swing in her backyard. Although it's been over a year ago, sometimes it feels like yesterday when I heard it. So here's Brianna Bailey to talk about her memories and the peculiarity of time.
The car door slams closed with a massive thud. I remember in vivid detail the massive, intimidating sand dunes which loomed far above me. The cloudless night sky was dead silent, aside from the distant sound of waves crashing against the shore. The path was long and dark, full of twists and turns, narrow and foreboding. The sand crunched against my shoes as I made my way down the obscuring dune towards a steep embankment leading to the water. Immediately, I noticed that what we had come for was not there. We had missed it. My dad and I sat there watching the waves crash against the shore, imagining the bright blue colors which we'd hoped to see light up the now pitch black water. The earth was still and deserted. There wasn't a person in sight. I remember wondering many times, what are we doing here? thinking, this is a complete waste of time. At 11 p.m. on a random Tuesday night, my dad and I had found ourselves at Marina State Beach in search of bioluminescence, which we ultimately never found. One might call this excursion a horrible use of time and a bad idea for going out on a school night. I distinctly remember my mom thinking so as we exited the house that evening. But despite the apparent failure of our stated mission, the fact I can still manage to recall this unremarkable Tuesday evening in such vivid detail, which took place so many years ago, says otherwise. I've always been intrigued by the idea of time, why a microwave minute feels so much longer than a normal minute, why a watch pot never boils, why time drags when you're bored and flies when you're having fun. If the only constant in our lives is time, why does it feel so inconsistent? Well, whether we choose to accept it or not, time controls in many ways. We live our lives on firm deadlines and expectancy, being told proverbs such as, time is money, and the early bird gets the worm. Despite their inspirational intent, proverbs like these left me with an unhealthy fear of wasted time. In my household growing up, I had two full-time parents who had very little time. They dropped me off at school early in the morning so that they wouldn't be late to their meetings. And after school, they'd load me up with as many extracurriculars as possible so I'd have something to do while they were off at work. My mom tells me that one time when I was in second grade, I sat her down for an important talk and proceeded to tell her that I was overbooked. Now, my mom and I look back and laugh at this moment, as being overbooked isn't exactly a typical problem for the average second grader. But as a result of growing up with nonstop activities, I now have a lingering feeling that any time I spend doing something which I consider to be unproductive is wasted time. This is a problem that I know many have struggled with. In fact, it has been proven through studies that we as a society are obsessed with time. The folks over at the Oxford English Dictionary say that time is the most commonly used noun in the English language, with year coming in third, while day and week both make a showing in the top 20. Our obsession with time reflects how much we value it, and by extension, how much we want to avoid wasting it. But maybe time shouldn't matter so much to us. As kids, we don't care that days of playing games and having fun are long and unstructured. We're not worried about what college we're going to go to or what we're going to do with the rest of our lives. We simply live in the moment. So why should time tighten its grip on us as we age? Why should we have to force ourselves to balance the challenging demands of long days and busy schedules? Why shouldn't we be able to find the time on the average Tuesday night to attempt to catch a fleeting glimpse of bioluminescence? Well, because our time becomes something that we must not only consider, but also attempt to control. And here's the irony. The more time we spend worrying about wasted time, the more time we feel is wasted. In 2020, I lived on such a strict, self-made schedule that I pre-planned each moment of the day. 6 a.m., wake up. 6:05, make my bed. 6:15, make breakfast. 6:30, eat breakfast. The list goes on. Looking back on 2020, I now realize that this schedule did not only make up one day, it made up a whole year of my life. But can I tell each day apart? Not at all. Do you all distinctly remember each day during the COVID-19 pandemic? Probably not. Maybe you remember the first day we went into quarantine. Maybe you remember starting online school or work. Maybe you remember the day vaccines were released. There's probably a reason for each memory you have. Those moments stood out to you above the others. Consistency and schedules can help us stay organized, but if overdone, they can limit us. Our lives metaphorically shorten as our days blur together. When I take a moment to reflect and look through old memories, I notice one subtle pattern. In the end, I only remember my highs and lows, rarely the in-between. My vacation from 11 years ago feels like yesterday, but I can't remember what I ate for breakfast. I remember getting lost on a four-doored hike in middle school, but I can't remember what questions were asked on my AP Bio test last week. Good or bad, emotionally charged memories are preserved in greater detail compared to neutral ones. But why do we remember certain things and not others? Studies show that oftentimes we forget due to a phenomenon called interference. Sometimes our memories will compete and interfere with other memories. When information is very similar to other information previously stored in memory, that is when interference is most likely to occur. For example, let's say you're in Mr. B's class, and tomorrow he decides to teach you about 7 different wars. I'm betting that you are going to exit that classroom with all 7 of those wars jumbled up in your mind, as they certainly had some overlap. But on the other hand, let's say for that same class, Mr. B instead decides to jump up on the table and to sing to you about one of those 7 wars. I'm betting that his students are going to remember and talk about that moment for ages. To do the exact same thing every single day is to allow for interference to occur and for your memories to blur together. The memories we make influence the way we perceive the world around us, the way we react to new situations, how we perceive ourselves, and how we interact with others. For these reasons, our memories are incredibly important and not something to be taken for granted. I remember my second birthday party. I remember finally buying the penny board that I'd been obsessing over for weeks. I remember my finest essays. I remember my worst grades. I remember my sophomore speech. I remember meeting my best friends. I remember moving schools. I remember almost burning down my house during my science fair experiments. And one day, I hope I'll be able to say that I remember giving a TEDx talk. I'll leave you all with one final thought. If given the opportunity to go out on a random Tuesday night and search for bioluminescence, do it. Sometimes it's the things which we try but fail to see which we remember most vividly.
Many of you have probably watched the movies Terminator, Avengers: The Age of Ultron. These are some of my favorite movies, and I think cool examples of AI and its dangers. Also, most recently, The Mitchells and the Machines, about AI taking over the world. Most people might immediately be intimidated by these fictional storylines and think it would apply to the real world. But Danica and Isaac have a different perspective, a more academic and scientific viewpoint. Here's Danica Tang and Isaac Chen to talk about artificial intelligence.
Hello, everybody. So let's begin by a very simple question. For all the students here, which one of you have recently used an AI text generator on one of your recent assignments?
Don't answer that, that's a trap. But more seriously though, I'm sure that all of you have recently seen the words artificial intelligence everywhere across media channels. In fact, there's been ChatGPT, AI for speech-to-text, image generation, self-driving cars, and even AI used in pharmacy contexts. And this growing technology has many people concerned about its implications, such as increased plagiarism, having issues with AI biases, and economical impacts.
As computer science students, we have also seen the effects of AI in programming. Just this past year, AI has been able to generate fast and efficient computer code. And it's actually really good at programming that a lot of our professors are concerned about students using them for our programming assignments. And they came together and created an AI detection software for computer code. On the flip side, though, we've also seen the development and creation of a lot of really fascinating AI-driven technologies, which change people's productivity across different industries.
And let's look at some examples of my favorite AI so far. AI created art. So here's Van Gogh's Starry Night, but instead of the sky, they have stars as cats. And here's an oil painting portrait of a capybara wearing medieval royal robes and an ornate crown on the dark background. Here's the Golden Gate Bridge in the style of Monet. And a hot dog lover, Shiba Inu, working as a coder. And as you probably have seen also, ChatGPT is an AI who's as smart as a friend. And it's so smart that I could ask it to help me generate some healthy meal ideas and even ask follow-up questions such as, how do I actually make number 2 and like the specific sauce? But even though AI is incredibly powerful, we want to assure you that AI is actually not that scary with our little bit of expertise in computer science. In fact, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to be able to understand AI.
So traditionally, we like to associate speech or art with a high level of intelligence and maybe some self-awareness. So it's natural to believe something like Siri or ChatGPT could also harbor some kind of self-awareness. But that's not necessarily the case. It's important to understand that these computer programs are created with the goal to behave like humans. But the way that they achieve this behavior is vastly different. As an analogy, both a bird and a helicopter can fly, but the way that they achieve flight is different. So this is like a general AI flowchart where a lot of AI models work similarly. So for AI to work, it must be trained. So training is when an AI carefully analyzes a huge amount of previously collected data set to collect as many patterns and details as possible. After training, an AI is ready to take on user input. An AI will generate an output based on what it understands about the about the training data. And this output will be converted into an action item, so a meal idea, a painting, or in a case of self-driving cars, a steering input or pressing on the brakes.
So in terms of actual training data, in order for AI to know what it's looking at, it doesn't just all of a sudden know. So actually, the training data that it has to be fed in must be associated with specific keywords. So on the top left, for example, we could feed it Van Gogh's Starry Night, and it would associate with the keywords Van Gogh, Starry Night, and the sky. Similarly, it might look at other images of the night sky, and the user would tell it that there's keywords like sky, night, and trees. And the AI model would then learn from these two pictures and see, oh, they both have the keyword sky. It must have something in common. And when you ask it to then generate something, such as this picture here, it would know that the sense of idea of a sky is something to doing here based off of all the input data it has received.
So actually, we are not that unfamiliar with the whole business of data labeling and data training because we've been doing it all along for CAPTCHAs. So CAPTCHAs is a human authentication software where they will give you a keyword and you will try to pick the images that contain the word. Some very smart users have noticed that most of these words have to do with important things a driver must be aware of on the road, such as crosswalks, stop signs, traffic lights, and school buses. Have you ever wondered why this is the case? As you may have guessed, CAPTCHA is actually labeling data for self-driving car AIs. So when you select the images that contain the stop signs, you are actually refining the way that these AIs would detect stop signs in the real world. So as you can imagine, there are many, many people around the world labeling data for self-driving AIs. So this really is a collective effort to make self-driving safer for all.
So we saw so many cool examples in the powers of AI. Now, are you kind of worried that AI might be starting to become so powerful that it might take away your jobs? Well, this was a similar worry for a lot of people back in the time of the Industrial Revolution. So, in the early 18th century, steam powered engines just became a new invention, and it was so groundbreaking at the time that it transformed a lot of industries. For example, the power loom here was a machine that suddenly enabled mass production of textiles. And the traditional hand loom weavers at the time were very anxious and concerned as they thought it would quickly render their jobs obsolete. However, to their surprise, their jobs are actually not gone, and they were able to become the power loom operators, taking the most benefits and efficiencies from the power looms. And with this increased efficiency, the prices of textiles were now going down, and it became so affordable for everyone that demand suddenly rocketed. And now the hand loom weavers, who are now the power loom operators, all of a sudden made a lot more money, and people are able to have better quality materials at the time. AI is very similar. Some recent research by OpenAI out in March states that over 80% of jobs would be increased in productivity by at least 50% through AI and its co-inventions. And with all of these increased productivity, people would be able to dedicate their time towards doing more useful things, such as considering the ethical impacts and social impacts of our inventions, and making sure that all of our technology created are actually advancing our world.
In the 19th century, the invention of the telegraph have pioneered the industry of real-time communications. There was only one problem, though. Back in the days, the wires, the electrical wires that are used to carry these signals are not insulated. As a result, interference from the environment, like heat or wind, would quickly reduce the signals, making it incapable of traveling far enough. This gave rise to a very particular invention, and that's the insulation materials for these electrical wires. Insulated wires would allow these signals to travel farther because they're no longer susceptible to outside interference. So as you can imagine, many innovations like AI will lead to many co-inventions. And each one of these new technologies have the ability and the potential to revolutionize many industries. So this is why AI is really fascinating, because many of the co-inventions are yet to be realized.
So with that, don't be too scared about AI. If anything, be excited about the incredible opportunities and inventions that are yet to come. We would like to invite you to try out AI yourself. Have a conversation with ChatGPT, play around with DALL-E, attend some tech conferences, and see how you might be able to apply it to your fields of interests. Stay curious, open-minded, and be excited to explore. The possibilities of a better future for all of us is endless.
Many of you may know Maria from the many musical productions that she's been in, both Western Stage and York School. I know her from one too, a whole year ago in Frozen Jr. Since then, I've gotten to know what's gone in her head, and she's not one to give in to others' opinions or let them bother her. This also is what helped her find her passion in acting. So here is Maria Elena Mejia Contreras to talk about her journey to finding her future.
I had a lot of trouble trying to figure out this TED Talk. I knew what I wanted to talk about and the story I would tell, but when it came down to actually writing it, I couldn't figure out what to say. Major writer's block. Something you don't want to have when you have a deadline for a TED Talk. And so, in an attempt to clear my mind from the blankness, I laid in my bed, wondering, why can't I figure this out? I know the story I want to convey and the message, but I can't seem to translate my mere thoughts into words. Here was my idea. When anyone asked me anything about my favorite subjects, music styles, anything, classes, it all came down to one faulty answer. I don't know. I'm too indecisive. My fear of fitting into the ideals of society shut me and my imagination down from the very beginning of my life. The one question I always had an answer to, however, was that question adults love to ask. What do you want to do when you grow up? Immediate answer, a doctor. And the best part about it is that it seemed to be something people liked to hear. They'd applaud me as if I'd made the most intelligent decision of the universe. When I was younger, I loved anatomy. I loved studying the different systems of the body. My favorite was the cardiovascular system. I would recite the circulation of the blood over and over to the point in which my sisters had to beg me to stop. I don't know why I found interest in this, but it fascinated me. The way in which the different systems of the body work together to create something so wonderful, a human being, a person. And so, at a very young age, I decided this is what I want to do in my life. This is my calling, and no one could convince me otherwise. At age 4, I decided I had my whole life planned out. I would be an amazing student, get into Stanford, graduate, get an amazing job, become the best doctor around, and of course, become super rich. But my 4-year-old brain left out a few uncalculated factors. About 10 years later, I realized this is not what I want to do in my life. I don't know why I lost interest in medicine or how. All I know is that I did. And so I started to do what most do. Question my life. The meaning behind it, of what would come next, the purpose. And then I started wondering why I wanted to do medicine in the first place. I mean, I loved anatomy, but I loved so many other things, so why medicine? My mother tells me that it's because I wanted to help people. I wanted to take care of her and my father when they grew older, like a thank you. But there must be other ways of doing so. So I questioned, is this all just a trick of our society? The way in which we put ourselves in social hierarchies from a young age, having things such as our careers put into this different things that we feel we have to achieve. And so, as I lost myself in all these questions, I decided it doesn't matter, at least not now. If push comes to shove, I can just go into college undeclared and explore my options. So, I decided to focus on myself, my well-being, and focus on my hobbies. In doing so, I was presented with the opportunity to audition for the Western Stage's production of Tuck Everlasting. After a couple weeks of auditions and callbacks, which felt like an eternity, I booked the lead as Winnie Foster. Surprised but delightedly, I accepted the role, putting everything in to demonstrate that I belonged. I had countless hours of rehearsal. Tuesday through Friday, 6 to 10. Saturday and Sunday, 12 to 4, and after a very late lunch break, 6 to 10. Soon enough, my life became split between school and theater. But, of course, school is always the priority, always is and always will be. But theater started becoming a little more of my priority. I loved it. Being at the Western Stage, there was something about the way in which I could use my voice as a form of expression. I could be good or bad, and it didn't matter because whatever I did, it wasn't me. It was my character. When I wasn't in rehearsal, I thought about the rehearsal schedule, what I would practice. And when I wasn't on stage, I thought about it. The lights shining down on us, letting go of every possible emotion. And so it was no longer, I don't want to be a doctor. Rather, I want to go into performing arts. And as simple as that might sound, it was not simple at all. You see, when you tell people you want to be a doctor, especially at such a young age, you get responses such as, that is wonderful. You know, they're paid well, they're respected, they're educated. You'd make a wonderful doctor. On the other hand, when you tell people you want to go into performing arts, you get answers more like, oh, that's nice. You can always change your mind. Or, interesting. What about being a doctor? Or, my personal favorite, that's cool, but you might want to get a backup. Their attempt at being supportive is there, but sometimes I just wish they'd say nothing at all. And so, when people asked me what I wanted to do in life, this question joined most. I don't know. I'm too indecisive. Or I'd go back into my default of becoming a doctor. And this is why I would hide. I wanted to go into performing arts, and I knew it was what made me happy, but sometimes my happiness didn't seem to be enough. At least not for society. Luckily, my parents are very supportive, and not the fake kind. They truly just want me to be happy, and that allowed me to see that that's what really matters. As I've continued working with the Western stage, most recently in their 2x4, working with prop design and acting, along with many other things, I've met a lot of wonderful people who have shown me the true value of the arts. Working with a lot of young adults who are a few steps ahead of me in their career has allowed me to see that what they do is important and special, not because someone told me to, rather because I could see it in everything I learned from them. From tech to prop design, set design, costuming, even stage and theater etiquette. Being responsible, respectful, timely, honest, and kind. But most importantly, because they've shown me that it's important to just be yourself, regardless of what other people think. And there I was, laying in my room with a wonderful idea for a talk, not being able to get my words down on paper. And then it hit me. I'm afraid of what people think. In an attempt to write about defying society and not caring about people's opinion, I was faced with that same exact difficulty, just in a different way. Worried about what you all would think about what I said and did on this stage. So, I'm not here to tell you to not be afraid or that you shouldn't worry about people's opinions, because you will. Even if you try not to, you most likely will. And when you think that you don't, ask yourself, am I being myself, or am I being what I think other people want me to be? I do, however, have this request. If there's something you want to do, something you think will bring something positive and powerful out of you, do it. Don't let other people's opinion be the reason that you don't. And if you're afraid of the outcome, that's when you know that it's important. I'll start. Can I please have a volunteer? Yes, Ben? You can stay in your seat. Sorry, I should have been more specific. Would you please ask me what I want to do in life? You see, it's funny you ask. I was just thinking about that. Yeah, I want to go into performing arts, double major with English because, of course, I need a backup. And, there's also art in that, poetry, literature, creative writing. And I truly just feel like it brings out something great in me. It allows me to channel myself in the most positive way. I want to show children and even adults that there's so many things you can do in life just to be happy, or try something new, experience, maybe even just take a breath and escape for a few minutes. Channel your emotions. Would you please ask me why? You see, it's interesting you ask. When I was younger, I loved anatomy. I could never figure out why. Why anatomy and then performing arts? But I think I figured it out. Think of it this way. Society. Building blocks that create our reality. The reality that is reality because we decide that it is. Systems and hierarchies that create what we believe is valuable for us to see something positive within ourselves. Anatomy. Systems of the body that work together to create something wonderful. A human being. A person. This is where we get to take control, define our own reality, our own building blocks through our thoughts and emotions. Theater. It has just as many moving parts that come together to create something magical, almost like a life form of its own. The lights are the eyes. The orchestra is the vocal cords. The singing and dancing are the soul. The costume is the skin. Now I ask you, what do you want to do in life? What is one thing you want to experience, achieve, accomplish, try? It can be anything, big or small. Doesn't have to be life-changing. It can be if you want it to. I just have one request. Whatever you choose, own it.
I hope you all enjoyed all the wonderful stories and all the stories of the speakers today. And I hope that they helped you discover that human or that force within you. And maybe now you can go home and go try a new thing. Well, thank you for coming. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and may the 4th be with you.
Perfect.